Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, I almost don't know where to start because of the big topics that we have. We have three of the state's leading journalists, as they say. Let's get to it.
This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers, a fast-paced, unrehearsed weekly discussion with and about the leaders who shape your world. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Well, how about these topics? You want to talk about important topics? The federal and state investigation into the Wolf administration's permitting when it comes to natural gas pipelines. How about a revival? The possibility that the state legislature will increase the minimum wage. How about this? The heartbeat abortion measure, what will happen to it? And then finally, if we get to it, voting issues in the state's off-year election. Joining me, as often is the case, to talk about the big issues, I'll go right next to me. You want to go right here? This is Charlie Thompson with the Patriot News PennLive. Sitting across from me is John Micek. He's the editor-in-chief of Pennsylvania Capital Star. And Katie Meyer, she's the Capitol Bureau Chief with WITF. I don't even know where to start with this. So I'm going to start with you, Charlie. You're sitting here to my right. Mm-hmm. The feds and the state are investigating the Wolf administration in terms of the pipelines that go from the southwestern part of our state through the southern part of the state into the southeast,
to markets,
to markets all over the world. Now, let me put it this way. Is anyone even suggesting, you can disagree with Governor Wolf on policy, on issues, but where ethics concerned, and he's been, remarkably free from any kind of ethics scandal since in his entire administration. I mean, his entire tenure as governor.
Yeah, I mean, that's what made everybody do a double take at this news that Wolf administration, current and former Wolf administration staffers had been contacted for interviews by the FBI because, we've all seen Governor Wolf come into editorial board meetings in our respective newsrooms, and, he gets offered the obligatory bottle of water. And the guy, if he takes the bottle of water, grabs his wallet, hands some unsuspecting staffer.
He would literally do that in our editorial board meetings. Throw down a couple of bucks for a bottle of water.
Hands some unsuspecting staffer $1, and it's like, well, I don't know what to do.
So what's the specific investigation about?
The problems with the pipeline construction, the Mariner East pipeline construction has contaminated wetlands, it's contaminated groundwater drinking supplies.
Is that because the natural gas gets into the environment?
No, it's more construction related.
Oh, construction related. I got it.
And because this pipeline is simply carrying natural gas from one end of the state to the other, so it can get to market. But the it's odd because pipeline construction has been around for almost a century, and it's weird to me that these guys are doing this project like it's like the first time they've ever built a pipeline because there's so many problems.
Well, it's the ground that they've gone through has been plagued by sinkholes. They've been going through residential areas, and that, of course, has kind of drummed up more contention.
So what's the specific investigation about when it comes to that they did what?
So basically, they say that the Department of Environmental Protection, they're the people who have to issue the permits for this pipeline. So they're saying the administration was pressuring, potentially, the DEP to issue these permits, even if it wasn't totally safe, and even if the DEP would not have done so otherwise. They also are looking into, this could be a separate thing, or it could be related, whether the administration received anything for the pressuring. So anyway, this is all alleged. Nothing's confirmed yet.
This could go on for months and months.
Well, potentially, yeah. I mean, federal investigations, when they unfold, they tend to unfold slowly and over time. But I mean, again, this is extraordinary. It raised all of our eyebrows because there's never been any hint of anything about the administration before. Yeah. As Charlie quite ably reported this morning, that Wolf has sometimes faced accusations that he can be a bit Machiavellian in his dealings, particularly when it came to that prescription drug matter. So, some Republicans have been looking askance at him for a while. Yes.
Sure. Well, and I also should say, the pipeline thing and the natural gas industry generally, I mean, this is a huge multi-million-dollar project. Other states, for instance, our neighbor, New York, have said just moratorium on pipelines, moratorium on fracking. We're not going to do it. They have the Marcellus Shale as well. Pennsylvania went in a different direction. We have used that resource.
Unlike some Democrats who oppose it for environmental and climate reasons, Governor Wolf though he has some, so he wants to tax the amount of natural gas that,
He's always wanted to be a full partner with natural gas. He's wanted it to develop and create jobs, and he's wanted to tax it to support public education and other things.
We saw that as recently as this week with him breaking with the mayor of Pittsburgh over the development of petrochemical plants. The Wolf administration is routinely enraged environmentalists who feel like they're being too soft on the industry.
Yeah. All right.
So we don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
These investigators will find out.
But this is the first. But here's the point, and you can correct me. This is the first sort of investigation into the Wolf administration. End of quote, period. Am I right or wrong? Has there been anything else? I'm not talking about something minor, but
that we are aware of.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it. That we were aware of. All right.
We should say the Associated Press reported this, so shout out to those guys for breaking the story and for doing great work on it.
All right, we're going to run to a break. How many different times over the last year have we talked about minimum wage? Is it back on the table? Is it likely to pass the legislature? I'll let the journalists figure that one out.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, it's back on the table. I'm talking about the state's minimum wage at $7.25 an hour. Governor Wolf, as of last summer, wanted it to go to $12, ultimately to $15 an hour. Every state around us has a minimum wage above $7.25. All right, John Micek, editor-in-chief, Pennsylvania Capital Star. Where does all this go? Does it go anywhere?
The administration certainly and their allies in the legislature would like it to. There has been some conversation, Terry, when the legislature was lost in town a couple of weeks ago, that the Senate might be eyeing up an increase to the minimum wage, perhaps $9.25, $9.50 an hour. Senator Tina Tartaglione of Philadelphia, who's been kind of leading that charge, had reached out to Senate Majority Leader Jake Corman to try to begin those conversations. And that's where things kind of stood when last I checked in on them. The eternal obstacle here remains the House, which has resisted any increase to the minimum wage at all. The governor has not let this go, pointing out, as you have, that every single surrounding state has a higher minimum wage than Pennsylvania's, and that it's suffered little or no deleterious effects to its economies because of it.
Yeah. Now, Governor Wolf has sort of laid off of this for a while. You haven't heard him talk very much about it. You think it comes back now?
I think it comes back in his next budget. I mean, this is one of those things that it's an annual issue more than a week-by-week issue, in that it gets brought up annually, and there seems like there might be some chance for progress, and then Republicans shut it down or just ignore it.
Yeah.
So, and I will say, Terry, like, the thing that I always look at when we're talking about this is, like, how seriously are they taking it? Because Corman's given lip service to the idea of maybe increasing the minimum wage before, but then never held hearings on it. The one hearing that we saw was in the House on the minimum wage, and the Republicans who run the committee brought in two economists who don't believe in having a minimum wage at all. So that was sort of their mission statement on the issue. And so I don't want to be too negative, for the people who would like a minimum wage increase, but we have not seen much movement in the past.
Yeah, but I think they may not need hearings now, because if there's a deal done, this could just get done. I think that the chamber to watch will
move it through without hearings.
As John said, the chamber to watch will be the Senate, because if they have a compromise that they want to try and do something on by the end of the year, see, for the Republicans, it kind of disarms that issue in legislative races next year.
Which is one of the things that was motivating.
Yeah, go ahead. What were you saying?
No, it's just that was one of the things. They wanted to take it off the table for 2020, so they weren't getting hit over the head with it in vulnerable races in the Southeast.
Yeah. And so I think the chamber to watch will be the Senate, because if there is a deal that people agree to, they will do it there first, and then that will the House's hands will be forced a little bit.
So we'll have to wait and see. Governor Wolf, it's been a major part of his agenda, I think, for almost his entire, I think almost every budget he's put something in about increasing it. We'll see where it all goes. All right, if we're going to turn to another important subject, when we voted, whatever it was, Tuesday a week, I'll go back to November 5, there were some pretty significant issues that transpired as people went to vote. Long lines, problems with the voting machines, the verifiable paper trail. John, I mean, 2/3 of the counties already have the new machines. Some didn't have enough, apparently, and there was some difficulties. Not in every county, but guess what? Next year, the turnout is going to be up in the presidential election.
Yeah, I mean, we saw irregularities, Terry, in York County, where there was a lot of problems where, in fact, state Republicans threatened a lawsuit over it that got resolved kind of at the last minute. There were huge problems in Northampton County in a judgeship race up there. Our colleagues at the Morning Call, in fact, reporting earlier this week that they'd stumbled across hundreds of uncounted votes that had somehow not made it its way into the process.
Right.
Caught up with Governor Wolf last week, who was upbeat about next year that with this dress rehearsal, so to speak, for 2/3 of the county, that those problems would all be ironed out. It seemed like an optimistic projection given what went on, but we'll see.
Yeah, but
we have an interesting development in Dauphin County, Terry. The county commissioners yesterday became the first county in the state, as far as we know, to basically reject the premise that they are going to replace their voting machines by 2020. That's the Wolf administration's edict as per the settlement with Jill Stein and the Green Party.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, there have been a number of changes, absentee ballot changes. If you have a medical, you used to have a reason to get a ballot. Now you don't. So
no more straight party balloting.
All right, we're going to run to another break. When we come back, I'm going to start with Katie. Heartbeat abortion measure. It's controversial. Does it move? Where does it go? Governor Wolf has threatened to veto it, but I'm going to let Katie and the panelists weigh in on that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Credit Union Association. Pennsylvania Credit Unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, check out ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Welcome back. We're talking with some of the state's leading journalists today, and I want to tell you, we've gone through an array of very, very important subjects, and Katie Meyer, I can't imagine a more controversial subject when you get down to abortion, particularly when you deal with a piece of legislation that's generally referred to as the heartbeat law, or I should say the heartbeat bill. Mm-hmm. What's the heartbeat bill?
So it is a measure that would effectively ban abortion in Pennsylvania. I mean, that's really what it would do. So they say that it would cut off, the possibility of a woman having an abortion after a heartbeat can be detected in the fetus.
Right.
Usually that's between 6 and 8 weeks. Many women do not know they're pregnant at that time, so it would really just outlaw abortion in almost all cases. So the reason that this is being pushed, it's got a couple of very conservative lawmakers. Stephanie Borowitz in the House is sponsoring her Chamber's version of it. Doug Mastriano in the Senate. We actually just had him on Smart Talk on WITF, so I'd urge everyone to listen to that.
Promotion, that's all right. You can promote it.
But so it is a controversial bill. Essentially, they acknowledge that it's an effective ban, and they say that's good. They're very anti-abortion. Now, Governor Wolf has said he will absolutely veto this. People say that it's arbitrary cutting it off at 6 weeks because, it's like, the argument that I've heard people say is like, okay,
currently,
so why is a heartbeat
have
important?
an abortion up to 24 weeks. Do I got that right? Am I correct about that?
And that's kind of what the Supreme Court has said in Roe v. Wade. That's when a fetus is viable outside the womb.
John, the Governor Wolf has said he's going to veto it, so it can't go anywhere. They can't override. There's no way they override it.
They're not the votes in the House or the Senate to override it. But when you talk to Borowitz, when you talk to Mastriano about this, they're long gaming it.
Yep.
Governor Wolf is term limited out come 2022. They are looking ahead to the post-Wolf era to a potentially more friendly governor that was so along the lines of perhaps Republican ones we've seen in Missouri or Alabama or other states who might be more receptive to this. So they say they are laying this groundwork now, knowing full well that it'll be vetoed by this governor, but perhaps signed by another one.
Well, and also in terms of the long game, this bill is plainly unconstitutional. Yes. Roe v. Wade, there was a settlement in Pennsylvania as well that said you can't impede on a woman's right to an abortion before 24 weeks. The goal is to overturn Roe v. Wade at the Supreme Court. That's what a lot of these Republicans and Republican states want to do.
Right. Charlie, you agree? A little chance that it A gets through the legislature and B.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's kind of like a debating competition for the next 2 years in Pennsylvania, next 3 years in Pennsylvania, because as was stated, Governor Wolf, if there's one thing that he's resolute on, it's reproductive rights for women, and so that's where that goes. But I agree with what John and Katie said, that I mean it's a longer game for the. I mean,
we haven't heard much. I mean, typically, John, I'll go back to you on this, and you can weigh in too. You've covered the state's politics for a fairly long period of time. Is that abortion crops up and then it seems to go away in terms of, its relevance in the legislature. I'm not talking about its relevance to, the citizens, both for and against it. Go ahead.
I mean, we see these bills like this in every session. We've seen them for the past 4 or 5 legislative sessions. There have been the so-called ultrasound bill under Tom Corbett. They took a run at a 20-week abortion ban that Governor Wolf subsequently
lowering it
vetoed.
from 24 to 20.
Right. And it seems like they try to throw a bone to the conservatives in each chamber. They say you can have your thing, push your bill. So they let them do it. The House tends to move these bills just because it is a more conservative chamber, and there are more cats to herd. Right. And because Mike Turzai, the Speaker, is ardently
one of his leading issues,
anti-abortion. Yeah. The bills tend to disappear without a trace when they get over to the Senate. The Senate being sort of more practical, realizing that it's going to face an inevitable gubernatorial veto, and they don't feel like they need to waste a vote on it. Yeah. But these folks get to go around the state saying, "Look what we did."
I understand. You agree?
Sure. I mean, abortion rights or opposition to abortion is kind of like it's kind of in the same bucket. While a different kind of issue, it's kind of in the same bucket as the gun owners' rights. For people that own guns, how it's very much a single issue that kind of like they.
It's an important.
They can't set it aside, and for people who are impassioned on the abortion issue, it's kind of the same way. So that's why that's part of the reason why it comes up over.
All right, one more segment to go. Governor Wolf and a certain leading Democrat in the western part of the state have had a little bit of a falling out. I'll ask John Micek about that, and then we'll see where we go after that.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine. And by the Pennsylvania Healthcare Association, the future of long-term care.
All right, we have Pennsylvania's involvement in the members of Congress from our state involved in the impeachment inquiry that's going on. But first, John Micek, the governor of the state and the mayor of Pittsburgh. They may not be on the same page.
Yeah, we alluded to this really quickly at the top of the show. So just to recap, Bill Peduto, the mayor of Pittsburgh, gave a speech the other week where he said that basta on petrochemical plant development in western Pennsylvania. There's a Shell cracker plant under construction in Monaca in Beaver County, about 30 miles west of
Big employer,
Pittsburgh.
right?
Huge employer, thousands of construction jobs, and then 600 permanent jobs later on. Governor Wolf, in an interview with KDKA-AM on Tuesday, broached the notion that there should be more such development in the West.
Wow.
They're eyeing one up in the northeastern Pennsylvania as well. There's a break with Mayor Peduto there. The governor arguing that these plants will, by cracking ethane, will create lightweight plastics, which in turn will be used to build more energy efficient and electric cars, which is a way to sort of wean the state off of natural gas and fossil fuels.
So all right, let's go. We have to talk about impeachment, not specifically what's going on with the hearings that have been held this past week, but Pennsylvania members of Congress, they're involved in this?
Yes, we have several members of Congress who are involved in the proceedings. On the Republican side, Guy Reschenthaler from Allegheny County sits on the Judiciary Committee. So too do Representatives Madeline Dean and Mary Gay Scanlon on the Democratic side of things, which means they could be potential managers if the House gets to voting on articles of impeachment.
Well, let's start with this. Is there any doubt that the Democrats do not impeach the president? I mean, isn't that a foregone conclusion from the stories that you read about?
Certainly seems that way.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to project anything.
I understand.
But yeah, I mean, look, we've got a Democratic majority, and it looks like that is the direction in which they are going. Yeah. And so we will see Pennsylvania's Democrats all support that. They've been all very unified.
Support the inquiry.
Support the inquiry and ultimately support impeachment, I think. Whereas all of the Republicans, Pennsylvania's delegation is split 9-9. All the Republicans oppose it.
9 Ds, 9 Rs.
9 Ds, 9 Rs. So, I don't anticipate a lot of big surprises. Of course, like, you know, what's going to come out in the impeachment inquiry, those are surprises often.
Yeah.
Right, but everyone is where they is where they are, where they are.
That's fine. That's fine.
Scott Perry, the Republican from here in central Pennsylvania, on Twitter, 10th Congressional District, on Twitter yesterday, mouthing the party line, dismissing the impeachment as a sham, saying there was no quid pro quo, everything that you've heard Republicans sort of say up until now.
Yeah.
Feels like that kind of mirrors the public attitude too, right? I mean, I don't know if you have polled on impeachment.
We did the inquiry. We did the inquiry in the Franklin and Marshall College poll, and there's no doubt that in all the polls that get done, a majority of Americans support the inquiry. But when it comes to impeachment, John, you and I were talking a little bit about this before we started the show, and it's still not at the 50% point.
It is,
but aren't these hearings
creeping up there?
But isn't the important aspect of these hearings not about members of Congress, but about the public trying to get greater support?
Well,
the Democrats who are doing this.
I think that's right, because if the public would move in a dramatic way, then it would be harder for. Let's say the public starts to move in favor of impeachment and removal, then it would be much harder for the Republicans to just stand against that with the 2020 elections coming up and everything.
I think the position
right now, though, I think that it feels like
hardened.
Yeah, it feels like they are, and I'm not really sure that there's going to be that movement.
But I mean, Terry, you see the Democrats really simplifying their messaging as compared to the Mueller probe, which was lost off in the legal stratosphere. All they're saying is he used his position for personal gain. Yeah, it's like 7 simple words, and they're trying to stay focused on that message in that hope of sort of moving the needle in public opinion. All
right, I want to thank you all. We went through a variety of topics, and we did them quickly, important topics. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, stay well.